We live in a society which has become very, very violent. The level of crime, and in particular the level of violent crime, just seems to be on the rise all of the time. And it's something that we have to live with, but we certainly do not have to accept. In this week's Parshat Pinchas, God comes to Pinchas and tells him that he is going to bless him and he's going to give him a gift. What did Pinchas do that he deserved God's gift? And if we look at the end of last week's Parsha, it seems to be quite a violent act. The head of the tribe of Shimon, Zimri ben Salu, was cavorting publicly with a Midianite princess. Pinchas came into the tent with a spear, and while the two of them were engaged in an intimate act, he killed them, in according to the law which is called Kanaim Poigimbol, that if such promiscuity is happening in the Jewish camp, a person of his own accord can take the law into his own hands and kill the perpetrators. This is something that only happened once in our entire history. And this is something that Pinchas did, and because of this, the plague which had come upon the Jewish people came to an end. Hashem comes to Pinchas and says to him that he's going to give him the gift of Kuhunat Olam, of eternal priesthood. Because up until that time, Pinchas had not been a Kohen. Although his father, Elazar, was a Kohen, Pinchas was not a Kohen. How is this possible? Well, Rashi tells us that when Hashem set aside the family of Aharon from the family of Levi to be Kohanim, there were in fact only 5 people that were set aside and anointed. There was Aaron and his 4 sons, Nadav, Avihu, Elazar, and Itamar. They were anointed to be Kohanim. Any children that they would have thereafter would be Kohanim. However, Pinchas was already born when his father was anointed. So he was left out. He was the son of a Kohen who was not a Kohen. But when he did this act, Hashem gave him the promise of Kuhnat Olam, that for all time he would be a Kohen. This is one of his gifts. Hashem also said to him, Hinani noten lo et briti shalom. I give him my covenant of peace. What was this covenant of peace? What did it mean? In what way did Pinchas need peace? Some of the commentators tell us that the peace was to protect him from the family of Zimri. They weren't going to take this lying down. Their father, their grandfather, their cousin had been killed by Pinchas. He had taken the law into his own hands. And even though he was justified in doing what he had done, nevertheless, there would be a certain amount of unhappiness with him, and perhaps they would try to avenge the blood of Zimri. And therefore Hashem says, I give him a covenant of peace to protect him. But I'd like to share with you the idea of the Netziv, Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin of Volozhin. And he gives a very, very beautiful and moving explanation. What was this promise that Hashem made of Briti Shalom, a covenant of peace? And he explains as follows. Pinchas did a violent act. It was a violent act that was justified according to the law. He had to do it. But nevertheless, when we do violent acts, it has an effect upon us. It changes us. It can turn us into cruel people. And therefore Hashem had to give him a covenant of peace, that he would be able to live with himself, that he wouldn't turn into a cruel person. And the Netziv offers as proof another verse in the Torah, when the Torah is speaking about the concept of an Ir Hanidachat. The Ir Hanidachat is a city where all of the people living in the city became idolaters, worshipped idolatry. And of course, idolatry under Jewish law is a capital crime. And the law was that people had to come into the city, kill all of the inhabitants, and burn the city to the ground. A violent act, justified by the law. But there the Torah says that Hashem will give you mercy. Why, of all of the mitzvot of the Torah, does Hashem have to say that if you do that deed, if you destroy the Ir Hanidachat, that I'll give you mercy? For the same reason. Because it was a violent act. And a violent act can have an impact upon us and turn us into violent people. If we take this a little bit further, there are certain mitzvot in the Torah that have to do with how we look after animals. For example, one is not allowed to take an egg or a chick away from the mother bird. You have to first chase away the mother bird before you take the chick or the egg. Another example is the prohibition of oto ve'et beno. We are not allowed to slaughter an animal and her young on the same day, a cow and a calf on the same day. What is the reason for this? And Maimonides tells us it's because even animals who are not perhaps thinking beings as we are have a certain amount of connection and closeness to their kin, to their young. And therefore, it's not considered to be correct or proper to do such deeds which may have a negative impact upon the animal. But Nachmanides, the Ramban, says it has nothing to do with the animal. It's not so much that we're concerned about the animal and the feelings of the animals. It's got to do with us. If we do things like this, if we can take a chick or an egg away from a mother bird, if we can kill a young calf in front of its mother on the same day, that turns us into cruel people. And that's what the Torah wants to guard against, that we shouldn't become cruel people. So we see from the Torah's perspective, even when you have to do something that is violent, and even when you have to do something that is cruel, the idea is that it should not change you into a cruel person, into a violent person. And that's something that we have to be careful with. At best, we have to make sure that we are not cruel people. We are not violent people. But when it comes time to do something that's uncomfortable, perhaps to rebuke a person, to tell a person off, we should still do it in the most compassionate way possible, because we do not want to turn into cruel and violent people. And that is the Briti Shalom, that is the covenant of peace that Hashem gave to Pinchas, that even after doing such a deed, he should be able to live with himself at peace. Shabbat Shalom.